Yeah, I don't know about that, but it gives you a little more home.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Hello. Hi. I am so delighted to introduce Marni Penning to you. Marni Penning Coleman. Well, before I read the official introduction, she's just awesome. I picked her up at Amtrak yesterday and we just laughed about half the time, didn't we?
And we have the same laugh. I don't know if you noticed.
We have the same laugh we discovered too. So
We do actually.
I'm flattered. Well, Penning is a memoirist, audiobook narrator, and actor with decades-long successful stage and film career. She began acting on stage at age 8. She thanks her 4th grade teacher for that, and has performed in 54 productions of 23 of Shakespeare's plays. And that first role was in Shakespeare, Julius Caesar of all things. Couldn't believe it. She is co-founder of Cincinnati Shakespeare Company, which is now in its 30th year. Her memoir, In Progress, right? Nobody Told Me, a memoir, deals with the challenges of neuroatypical ADHD sufferer. She has performed on stages all over the United States, England, and Scotland. She records audiobooks in her home studio, has her own engineer and a long-distance assistant, and with more than 260 titles available on Audible, more than 500 large cast recordings for graphic audio, including the ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, and Crescent City series, and more than 600 articles narrated for the Curio app. In 2024, Penning received medals for Audio Awards nominations for Best Fiction Narrator for Johanna Porter Is Not Sorry by Sarah Reed, and Best Audio Drama for Red Rising, Sons of Aries by Pierce Brown. And she was just nominated in 2025 for another audio award. Would you please welcome Marni Penning?
Oh, thank you all for coming. Thanks so much for having me here today. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. Did you say no? My name is Marni Penning, as Kathy said. I'm an award-winning actress and audiobook narrator, playwright, children's book illustrator, mother, passionate advocate for people to be kind to each other, and now I'm an author. I am a memoirist, as she said, which I'll talk about at the end, but I'm actually publishing a different book first, which centers on my life in the theater, so that's where I'll start. I'm so grateful Kathy has brought me up here from DC to be with you. I'm going to answer my most asked questions about my start in theater and how I got my job as an audiobook narrator, what my job is like. Do I have to read the whole book before I narrate it? Spoiler alert, yes. But if there's anything that's unclear, please let me know. So feel free to ask me questions as we go along. There will hopefully be some time at the end for questions too. So let's get started. Go ahead and change the slide if you wouldn't mind. So that's doesn't that look like me? I have wanted to be an actress as far back as I can remember. Some of my first memories are playing in our pretend box and dressing up with my 3 sisters and my cousins. We were all staging elaborate plays in our living rooms. When I was 8 years old, as Kathy said, a couple things happened that changed the course of my life. It was the first play, that was the first thing that changed my life, was that I saw a play put on by the Children's Theater of Arlington, Virginia, which is my hometown, that did plays for children by children. So the entire cast was comprised of children up to age 14. And as soon as I was able, I began auditioning for shows at CTA, and that's one of them. And I was hooked. Theater became my life. Have any of you seen My Name's Earl or Raising Hope or anything like that? Greg Garcia, the creator of My Name is Earl, that's his sister right there. And Greg was also in the show. We were like 9 at this point. So the second thing that happened was that I had a wonderful 4th grade teacher who introduced us to Shakespeare by getting us to perform Julius Caesar, a fourth grade class performing Julius Caesar. I just want you to envision that right now. For the Folger Theater Educational Festival. But I was sick the day of auditions and I was despondent because at this point I was like, I'm going to be an actor. And so she made me the stage manager and universal understudy, and I learned the entire script. So from then on, I was like, Shakespeare is my life. I live and breathe Shakespeare. So you could go ahead and change the slide now. I spent all of my formative years doing theater, and particularly Shakespeare, in junior high and high school and college, culminating with me touring the US and UK for 3 years with a troupe that is now known as the American Shakespeare Company. And then me co-founding the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company with a group of my college classmates, which is now in its 31st year. Since I wrote that, it's changed the year. You can go ahead and change the slide again. With all that and regional theater work, I've performed in 54 productions of 23 of Shakespeare's plays in my professional career. And that led me to the publication of my first book. More on that later. So, let me change the slide now. How did I get into audiobook narration, and what was my journey like transitioning from acting into this field? So when I became a union actor, and does anybody not know what a union actor is in here? Anybody not know? Okay. So when I became a union actor in 2000, I couldn't perform at Cincinnati Shakes anymore because it was a non-union company at the time. Now it's a very big, large equity company. But I moved to New York City to expand the reach of the company and, my own career. And I lived there for almost a decade, mostly doing regional theater. So for a stage actor, particularly a classical stage actor, you move to New York to leave it. So you can change the slide again. I would go away for 6 weeks to perform in a show and then come home for 2 weeks. And then I'd leave again for another show for 3 months. And then I'd come home for a week and leave again over and over and over. And I loved traveling and seeing the country. And so on one of my home weeks, I went to my high school reunion. And a friend introduced me to her husband's best friend, who they dragged along to the party. And you change the slide again. So we got married a year later. And suddenly I didn't feel like leaving for regional theater gigs anymore. So I worked mostly in DC theater, which is where we lived, still live. And I had my first experience there with audiobooks. I started narrating for the blind for the Library of Congress. And because my grandmother was blind when she died, she used the service. So I was doing it to honor her, but also only DC theater actors at the time were narrating for the service. And I did about a dozen books for them until 2012. But even when I was performing in DC theater, my husband had a 9-to-5 job and I was working nights in the theater. We wanted kids, and it's kind of hard to start a family if you're not in the same room with each other. So you can change the slide again.
Whoops,
Or not.
my finger slipped. What
That's
did I
okay.
do?
Let me see.
So sorry. Okay, wait, I got it.
There we go. If you,
Oh dear.
it's okay. 1 second.
Oh my.
Technical difficulties, please
Sorry,
stand by.
Marni.
Okay, here we go. That's there. Bigger.
There we go.
That's it. Okay, so I don't know how to get rid of this thing. So we're in full screen. Anybody with more technical savvy than I do that knows how to get rid of that top thing, let me know. But you'll see it, it's fine. So I took 5 years off of acting, 5 years off of acting to start our family. 1 year to get pregnant, 1 year to be pregnant, and 3 years to stay at home with the baby until he realized that I wasn't leaving forever when I went to work. So you can change the slide again. There we go. There we go. In the middle of all this, my college roommate, Andy Arndt, had become a commercial audiobook narrator and was inducted into the Audible Narrator Hall of Fame. And she had just started getting more work than she could physically handle by herself, but she knew all the right people and all the best people to create audiobooks. So she started a production company and hired me as her producer. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I know nothing about producing audiobooks, but I'll learn. And after we did this for a while, she said to me, you know, you really should be narrating audiobooks yourself. You've got the acting chops. And I was like, yeah, but only famous people do commercial audiobooks, right? And she's like, no, there are millions of audiobooks to be made, and there aren't millions of celebrities who want to take the time to do it. So I had ever only done voice acting in a studio with an engineer, like for the Library of Congress Books for the Blind, never on my own. So she tricked me into my very first audiobook credit. In a book that we were producing, the female narrator had missed one of the chapters that was narrated by a female character with a man's name, Teddy. So she thought it was the male narrator's responsibility. And the problem was she had just had brain surgery and the book had to come out. So my college roommate called me in a panic, and I found a studio and figured out the software all on my own and did the chapter. And that's how I got my first book on Audible. So you change the slide again. So after that experience introduced me to working on my own as an independent audiobook narrator, I felt like, okay, yeah, I can do this. So I had her coach me a little more. That's her in her studio in Harrisonburg, Virginia at the time. You really can live anywhere and do this. And so I had her coach me. I took some other classes with well-respected established audiobook narrators. I took big seminars, and I auditioned for a book on acx.com, and I got it. Let me change the slide again. ACX stands for the Audiobook Creation Exchange, and it's run by Amazon. Not my favorite, but it's where independent authors and independent narrators can meet and make an audiobook baby. So it's like, if you are by yourself as an author and you're by yourself as a narrator, and you don't want to have anybody in the publishing industry, like the middleman doing that for you, you just make your own audiobook. I attended my very first Audio Publishers Association conference, or APAC, which is next week in New York this year, in 2019, where I met and connected with lots of casting people in the audiobook industry, and I learned a ton. So when I returned home from my very first APAC, this is 2019, you'll notice no one is masked in there because it hasn't happened yet. I was cast in books for Blackstone Publishing, Harlequin, HarperCollins, The Audio Flow, Dreamscape, and I hit the ground running. Wow. So you can change the slide again. And now, after 6 years as a producer, I finally gave up the side of the business when my narration workload got too full. And now I'm an audiobook narrator full time. And between me and my romance pseudonym, which is on the side there, I have over 330 titles now on. And then these are my clients: Macmillan, Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, all the good people, Disney, Hyperion. Okay, you can change again. So what's my studio like? And how has it evolved over the course of my career? So the first voice acting gig that I did was with a $100 USB mic plugged into my computer under a comforter that I had draped over a tripod. But for audiobooks, which is long form narration, hours and hours and hours, I knew I would need a more sophisticated setup. So my very first studio in my house was a closet. Let me change the slide. So this is how I tricked it out. You'll find this is a common theme among professional audiobooks narrators. It's actually better if it's a closet that has clothes in it, because the clothing works as sound baffling to keep the recording from sounding too echoey. But as I did more books, I upgraded my studio with a professional mic and better acoustics. Let me change the slide again. I put about $1,000 worth of soundproofing into the structure because it shared an outside wall of our house. And I would have to stop recording for loud trucks, helicopters. We're in DC, so there are always helicopters. Even rain, the downspout was right outside of my booth on the outer wall of the house. Oh. So I built decoupled walls. Thank you, Tech Theater. So I have a theater degree, and I also have a graphic design degree. I'll talk about that in a second too. But I put soundproofing insulation behind the decoupled walls. I added mass-loaded vinyl on top, which is what I'm holding up there. That weighs 1 pound per square foot. So that right there is probably, sorry about that, probably about 35 to 40 pounds I'm holding over my head. It absorbs sound though. It says mass will absorb sound for you. And I bought all new acoustic tiles, the purple ones, purple and black ones. I went all out. Then came the day when I woke up to a massive construction project that was directly behind my house. There were chainsaws leveling most of the park right at my fence line, and a hydraulic hammer, like the bam, 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 pounding into the ground from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. So it was impossible for me to record during those hours. So for a while I recorded overnight, and while I am a night owl, I also had a small child who would get up at 6 a.m. no matter how little sleep I got. So that was unsustainable. Go ahead and change the slide. So I bit the bullet and invested in a triple-walled commercial sound booth called a Studio Bricks by applying for and getting a small business loan. It cost about as much as a used car. It's 4 feet by 4 feet, and it had to be custom made to the height of my ceiling, which is lower than 8 feet. It was manufactured in Spain and took 4 months to create and ship it to me on a boat, and I love it. I love it so much. Now I can't even hear lawnmowers in my own yard. My poor kiddo, who's 12 now, got locked out of the house, and I couldn't hear him pounding on the windows in my office. That's how good the soundproofing is. He's fine. He's fine. I also upgraded my microphone to an Audio Technica 4047, which is hooked up to a digital interface that plugs into my computer. So you can see it right here. This is the Audio Technica 4047. The digital interface is this here, this Focusrite Scarlett. And then this is a dedicated Mac Mini. If you guys can you guys see? You can stand up if you can. There's a dedicated Mac Mini over here, and it's outside my booth, so you can't hear any of the sounds of the computer because that would ruin your recording. I also have what's called an ART voice channel right here, and that cleans up the digital signal before it goes into my computer to further weed out any extraneous noises. I run the computer with a wired keyboard and mouse connected to the external Mac Mini because wireless signals don't transmit well through triple walls. And I read my script from this iPad mounted on a small desktop that I created from a board I bought at Home Depot. So you can change the slide. Okay, so how do you get jobs as an audiobook narrator? Being an audiobook narrator is very different from being a stage or a film or a TV actor in that we don't use agents for the most part. I do have an agent now. I got her last year. She helps me with new contracts mostly, but getting jobs is up to the narrator. And my college roommate who got me into this gave me amazing advice right at the beginning. You will get out of this job what you put into it, meaning nobody is just going to hand you jobs. You need to work your butt off to make the kinds of connections that will sustain enough work for you to make this a career. So in addition to acx.com and attending the yearly Audio Publishers Conference, I've also participated in speed dating auditions where you get 3 minutes to present yourself to a faceless Zoom room of casting professionals. That's me doing my my speed dating up there. I have my name in several different databases for audiobook professionals, some curated by the publishers, and some are completely open, like this one, Ahab Talent, is run by Penguin Random House, and anybody can create a profile on Ahab. And all of those have open auditions that I'll audition for if I'm right for a project. And I've gone to author conventions for romance, sci-fi, mystery thriller to meet authors directly. And this, do you recognize any of these people? This is Harlan Coben. This is Charlene Harris. That's Erin Spencer. She's a big romance writer. Lori Foster. I can't remember this dude. Lots of romance authors in that room. This is T.O. Payne. I'm doing his book in May. Miranda Eliason, I just did a book for her in December. This is Dakota Willink, who is writing, and that's me, by the way. Dakota Willink, this is my romance pseudonym, and I cosplay her at conventions. Because I mean, like, my hair, like, I'd like to go natural, so most of the romance heroines, like 20, 30 years old, I don't look like that. So she does. She's a happy girl. But Dakota Willink is writing a trilogy with my voice in mind because I met her at several different conventions and we hit it off so well. And then that's Sonali Dave right there, who writes like Indian versions of classic and well-known stories. Like she just came out with There's Something About Mira instead of There's Something About Mary. Very, very cool. This is one of her narrators, and this was the stage where Blake Lively and Colleen Hoover introduced It Ends With Us, and then took us all to 3 screenings of the movie. It was very cool.
Oh my God.
I know, right? That's so cool. Okay, so I submit my work for audiobook reviews and award competitions. You can change the slide. So like the Voice Arts Awards there. I write to audiobook casting people every 6 weeks to let them know what I've been up to and any awards I've received or high profile books I've narrated, just to keep myself top of mind for those people. And I also make sure people know about any specialties or areas of expertise that I have that would make me write for a book like Shakespeare, or parenting, or neurodiversity, or raising backyard chickens. Those are my chickens. You never know when a book about backyard chicken raising will come along. And I just did a book where the heroine was a graphic designer, which was my double major in college. I keep my website up to date so that people, so that authors can discover me in their, wait a minute, where am I? There it is. I read from scripts for a living, so people can contact me and have keywords embedded in the site for search engine optimization. Change those. And I reach out to authors whose work I see on social media or in BookBub or Publishers Weekly or other publications. If there's a book I'm interested in narrating and there's no audiobook of it yet. This woman right here, Kelsey Kingsley, I had seen an impassioned review of one of her books, and I checked and there were no audiobooks of it. And that's led to me doing 3 of her books so far. I keep my own social media up to date so that authors can discover me in their own social media feeds and hear my voice. So it's like my own little show. If someone likes my voice for a project, sometimes they'll send me an audition. And sometimes if they've heard me on another book, they may just offer me the book directly. I am currently completely booked up through the end of May, but I have books on my calendar through the end of 2026. So if you think about being an actor, and there are only so many shows in a year that you would be right for, and if you don't get those, then you don't work. There are always more books being made that need audiobooks being made of them. You can go ahead and change the slide. So what happens once I get the book? How do I prepare for a new project, and how is it different from stage and screen? So once I'm cast in the book, my assistant, who lives in Catskill, will look at the word count and determine how many finished hours it comes out to and place it on my schedule accordingly. With ADHD, I'm terrible at this, so this is why I've hired her. The finished hours are what you hear when you listen to an audiobook. The final length of the product when it goes on sale, that's the finished hours. So everyone narrates at different rates, but I'm pretty consistent at 8,200 words per hour. Therefore, if a book is 82,000 words, it's a 10-hour audiobook. One finished hour that you hear can take 2 to 3 hours in the studio to complete, depending on the complexity of the material or the number of accents or back and forth dialogue with 6 or 7 people in the same room, that kind of thing. So when I'm narrating a book in a continuing series, my engineer has noted that there's almost always what he calls the family dinner scene, where every character from every previous book comes back and they all talk to each other in one scene. And that could take a long time to research and match the voices if there are other narrators that have preceded me in the series. And that's usually my favorite part, because I get to like imitate all my friends at that point, because they're the ones who have done the books. Go ahead and change that.
So you're doing all the voices?
I do all the voices. I'll talk about that in a second. So I record Monday through Friday, usually from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. while my kiddo's in school. I work with my own professional engineer. This is John Detty, Detty Studios. He's in Ohio. So we meet on Zoom and I give him control of my computer. So I'm just freed up to perform. I can work alone, and I did for a very long time. And sometimes I still have to, but I'm much more efficient with a recording partner in the booth. I can usually double my output for the day and stay on track when he's with me. So with ADHD, it keeps me from swirling down an internet rabbit hole in the middle of a workday. Go ahead and change the slide. Do you read the book first? I always have to read the entire book all the way through first. That way I can shape the arcs of the characters throughout my narration. If it's a mystery thriller, I need to know who done it. So if characters have secrets, I need to know what they are so I can seed clues in how they behave from the beginning of the story. I'm doing a book right now where there's this mystery about this girl's family, and we don't find out what it is until the chapter before the last. So if I didn't read it, I would have no idea why she was saying the things she was saying. If someone has an unusual accent that they don't reveal until the final line, like, and then I went back to Edinburgh where I was born and raised, that would be a lot of wasted hours in the biggest difference. So yes, I always read the book first. Because I have ADHD, I have a very difficult time eyeball reading. The back and forth motion of my eyes puts me instantly to sleep. And if I'd only known that in college, I wouldn't have tried to cram late at night and fallen asleep over my books. So I use a screen reader now to set to about 280 words per minute. It sounds like chipmunks to everyone else, but I was like, oh. But it paints the entire story in my mind like a film. I see all the characters and I can determine what voices will fit them best as I go through my pre-listen. So that's what this is right here. This is my screen reader. That's my son, by the way. And that's my so I'm always listening to my next book whenever I'm by myself. If I'm making breakfast or I'm at the grocery store, I'm in the car, on the train up here. I even go to sleep listening to it, and I pick back up in the morning from the last part that I remember. There are people who use book preppers, and I used to do that too, to read the entire book for them, and then they give them essentially a book report. So if that's something you're interested in, people do hire for that, to summarize all the characters and the plot points, but it feels like free falling to me. Like I feel like I step in the booth and I know nothing, because also with ADHD, I forget things easily. So the story's not integrated enough from my mind if I use someone else. I used to mark up my scripts with full highlighting and notations, but my schedule's too packed now, there's no time. So I only use my notation method to describe a little bit on my auditions now. In a theater or film or television piece, you have to memorize all your lines, obviously. And you'll have rehearsal time, less for film and television than for theater, but for a play, you'd perform it over and over and over. In audiobooks, it's just one performance, and I play all the characters. Change slide. So where do I get the voices from the characters? My friend Stephen J. Cohen called me the maven of a million voices, which I love. I'm going to take a sip before I do this next part. So the main character in the book is always some version of me. It's not only the easiest thing for me to slip into, but also when I'm doing reporting of corrections, it's the easiest thing to get back into. The hero is as deep as I can comfortably make my voice to sustain it throughout the book. So this is usually the hero's voice. If there are close friends in the main character's life, I use Sex and the City casting. So the best friend is usually Charlotte. She kind of talks up here and she has a little bit of upspeak to her voice. And she's a little bit dimmer than the main character, but she's really loyal and she's very kind. Or if she's sexier than the main character, I make her a Samantha. And I lean into the languid way that she twists her sentences. And then any other friends are like a Miranda type. It's very straightforward and direct. But just changing those parts of the character will make him distinct when you're listening back to the book. And if I need more, I start going through friends' characters like Monica and Rachel and Phoebe and stuff. The parents are a smooth alto. It's usually the mom type who's, I want to take care of you. Or if she's a very hoity-toity mom, she goes to Taylor, like Holland Taylor's ways. And then like I go to John Slattery for the dad. And but if they're much older, I'll put a little bit of a wobble in their voice, or I'll be Wilford Brimley. That's what it is. And my secondary guys are almost always a tenor, to give you a break from that. His voice was deep and gravelly that every hero seems to have. So I go to Greg Kinnear. So Greg Kinnear is like, he kind of comes out at this part of my face, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going? My name is Greg Kinnear. It's nice to see you." So that's that. And then if there are teenagers, I'll take them about up to here. If they're like teenage guys, they're kind of talking like this. And some of them have a little bit deeper voice, but they still have a different way of talking than the older characters do. And then like teenage girls, sometimes they're like this, and lots of sighing and eye rolling. And then little kids go even higher.
So like little boys and little girls are a little bit different. So little boy will have a little bit more choppy way of speaking. The little girl might have a little more breathiness to her voice. And she might be running around a little bit more and telling people not to do things that they shouldn't do.
So that, but if there's. So if there are aliens or other creatures like that, I'll just take what the author gives me and I'll make something up, but I try to keep myself from hurting my vocal cords. I'm actually doing an audition right now where a kind of guy has to talk like this for a really long time, and I'm trying to figure out where to place it so it doesn't hurt me. It's very difficult to do. And I've had to play like fish characters. So it's so much fun. I love the job too. So I keep all the voices straight by recording the first couple of lines they say. And that's what that is over on that side, is character reference file. So if they don't speak for 20 chapters, like they come in chapter 3 and don't come back until chapter 34, I can listen to a snippet and drop right back in to match the character. And I keep those files indefinitely because you never know when you're going to get cast in a sequel that somebody decided to write 2, 3, 4 years later. Okay, I'm going to change that. So what's a typical day like for me? My husband, who is a saint, he gets my kiddo off to school since he has to be at the bus stop by 6:45 a.m. But if he's out of town, I do it, and it is not fun. But on an ideal day, I wake up at around 8 and I have a breakfast of oatmeal with chia seeds and hemp hearts, protein powder, diced fruit, blueberries. I found that that's the only meal that will sit in my stomach and keep me full without burbling. So I mean, like when you're recording, if your stomach is making noises, you have to stop. There's no way to get that out. So I record with a pillow over my midsection, but sometimes it's so insane. And I also have celiac disease. So if, God help me if I get a gluten reaction, because I have to stop. I just can't record. It's like underneath the entire record. It's awful. I can't drink coffee anymore either because it does the same thing to me. So I'll have a sugar-free watermelon Red Bull. And if they ever get rid of that flavor, I am done for. I make a full thermos of ginger tea with honey to keep my vocal cords warm and happy. And I fill up my handy Stanley cup. This was a gift and I'm so happy, with ice water as well. So I look like a beverage goblin when I'm going down into my studio. That's literally me with all 4 of my beverages. I warm up my voice. Like I did this morning, but I know I'm gonna be doing a lot of talking. I do humming, I do lip trills and tongue twisters and other vocal exercises I've learned over the years. It looks ridiculous. That's me on the end there, but it's effective. And I actually, for people who have to talk all day, like teachers and other people who have to use their voices for work all day, I actually made this for my physical therapist, because she's like, oh, I get such terrible, like by the end of the day, my throat is raw. So I made her a list of vocal warm-ups, and it's on TikTok. If you have to use your voice for work all day, and like different things you can do just to warm up for that. If it's going to be a particularly taxing day, like I just did a Chris Bojalian book for Penguin Random House, and it's coming out in 2 weeks, by the way. It's called The Jackal's Mistress. Okay. We recorded a 9.5-hour book in 3 days. Now, for reference, I usually only plan 1 or maybe 2 finished hours in a day. So if it's going to be a day like that, I'll not only use my personal nebulizer, which is this thing right here, and I breathe in some ionized saline to moisturize my vocal cords, but I'll also do a rinse with a Navage, which is that thing down there. It's like a neti pot on steroids. And it'll clean out my sinuses and make sure that I'm prepared to do my best work. Then I boot up my computer and log into my recording program, meet over my engineer with Zoom, and start. And we break for a 45-minute lunch around noon and go until 3 p.m. And that's the time my kiddo gets home from school. And then I'm mom for the rest of the day. I eat and sleep and wake up and do it again. It changes. Some of my favorite books that I've done or authors that I've worked for. Early on in my career, I took over a series from a friend of mine that had to give up the series because the author couldn't afford her hourly rate. So my friend sent her to me because we have very similar types of voices. And that's another thing that I love about this industry is everybody's so kind. You have to be kind and patient if you're going to be sitting in a booth by yourself for hours on end talking to yourself. So like it weeds out the impatient people pretty quickly. It's true. I love this woman to death. I've done 13 books for her so far. Her name is A.L. Kenora. I highly recommend her. All the main characters that I've done for her are teenage girls with supernatural elemental powers who save the world. I also did my brother-in-law, Arthur Streeter's book, The Trickster's Sister. On my TikTok, I also have, I think it's 18 voices, one person, 18 characters, one person or something like that. But I do all the characters, all the main characters from that book. It's about a girl who is best friends with a girl who's actually a goblin. And they have to dimension hop to find a magical twin to try to save the goblin girl's little brother who's been kidnapped by the trickster at the title. It's awesome. I got to play a half fish, half cat creature. And the fish monk that I was doing for you earlier, that's in there. And two rock giants in love, like these two gigantic rock creatures in love. It was awesome. And mischievous fairies,
Like little mischievous fairy that talks like this. It's just like all the good rockets are a little bit wacky, but they don't mess with humans much. You are a human, right?
it's amazing. I'm also incredibly proud of the books I've done for Sarah Reed. One which got me the nomination for Best Fiction Narrator of the Year at last year's Audience Awards, and that's called Johanna Porter Is Not Sorry, about a soccer mom turned art thief. It's brilliant writing. Okay. So speaking of awards, just in audiobooks alone, I've won 3 Earphones Awards to date. I've won a SOVAS Award, that's the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences, for my work in an anthology of horror stories. I won an Independent Audiobook Award for Best Young Adult Audiobook, and I was also nominated for Best Female Narrator for the same title. It was one of the ones from the 13 books lady that I was talking about. I was also nominated for an Independent Audiobook Award for an audio drama I was in. I got a SOVAS nomination for Best Teen Audiobook, one for Best Fiction Narration. I hadn't changed the slide. I have now been nominated for 3 audio awards, and that's like the Oscars of audiobooks. And I'm going to the ceremony next week to find out who won. So this was one, it's like my favorite moment. You can see like, these are all my friends and that's me up there. So it was and a moment I'll never forget. You can go ahead and change this slide. So it's like a very glam night on red carpet and hair and makeup people, and Amy Sedaris is hosting. It's going to be a blast. But I just want to point your attention to this real quick. So this is who I was up against for Best Fiction Narrator last year. Billy Fulford Brown, which is a friend of mine. Eunice Wong is a friend of mine. Ethan Hawke and Meryl Streep. And me. So that was, I'll never forget that name. You can go ahead and change the slide now. So moving over to my author side, how did I get the idea for my book? In 2022, I was restless after a couple of years of COVID, like I'm sure all of you were. And I found a Tony Robbins 3-day rah-rah course. And I was like, why not? I could use some rah-rah in my life. And during that 3-day webinar, Dean Graziosi, who's Tony Robbins' rah-rah course partner, asked the question, what's something that you know that nobody else knows that could make someone else's life better if they knew it? And I immediately thought of this one audition that I'd done in New York when I was a young actor. Now, in addition to acting, I've also been coaching actors since 1994, helping them audition for college and theater productions. And because I had a background in Shakespeare, I learned to mark my script with Shakespearean notation. In this memorable audition, the director had given me a monologue I'd never seen before and said, look that over and we'll see you in 5 minutes. And this piece was thick with wild imagery and non sequiturs and repetition at the beginning of almost every sentence. And I looked at it and I thought, 5 minutes. And then, okay, but I pulled out my pencil and I got to work. And 5 minutes later, I was able to wow the director with a unique, memorable, confident performance, and I got the job. And so when Dean Graziosi said, what's something you know that no one else knows, I immediately thought of that audition and how I scored my script with the techniques I've been teaching to my students for 30 years. And I'd always wanted to write a book outlining the technique, but for whatever reason, I pushed it off thinking, oh, well, nobody will ever buy this. I don't have an age and I don't know the first thing about creating a book. And I've written plays before. I have a full-length play that's been produced called Carol's Christmas about a woman who's been through a bad breakup and refuses to leave her house. So she's visited by the ghost of her ex-boyfriend past, her ex-husband present, and the ghost of her partner yet to be. And that was produced in DC in 2011. And I have another play that's almost completed about Women's Orientation Day in Hell. So a bunch of 1-minute plays that I've written for a yearly festival in DC. So I first developed this as an in-person course. And I've also filmed it as a video course. My dad is a writer. My sister is an author with a couple of books under her belt. And my mom and a couple of my sisters are teachers. And I've also taught for a few semesters at a college level conservatory in DC. So my friend suggested taking my webinar notes and creating the book version of the in-person course. And I was actually really apprehensive about it, but something that Dean had said in the rah-rah course that stuck with me was, if you can help other people with the things that you know, isn't it kind of selfish to keep all that knowledge to yourself? So I thought, who really needs this? People like me. Actors who freeze up when they have to audition in front of someone in power who can give them a job when they're given a piece they don't have time to prepare thoroughly, or people who lose their breath and panic when they have to speak in public. So I put my graphic design degree to work and typeset the book and created the cover, and it is ready to go. And I've already ordered the proof copy of it. It should be at my house when I get back tomorrow. I've decided to self-publish because in my work as an audiobook narrator, I've worked with a lot of indie authors. And to a person, they've all told me that they're so glad they decided to indie publish because they have complete control over their work and make far more money than they could with a publisher. And those are people that did have publishers and are now in the indie world. And with the advent of print-on-demand publishing, you can offer the book in many different avenues for multiple income streams. And last Thursday, I created my own audiobook. I'm going to change this on. So I've got 2 other books in the works. One is the memoir that Kathy told me about. Nobody told me about my journey through perimenopause. If y'all saw me with my fan at the beginning, this is why. And to my ADHD diagnosis at age 50, called Nobody Told Me. And the second is a collection of essays written when my son was a baby that I wrote as a blog called Insomni Mama. And hopefully I get both of those out in the next year. So this quote, you've probably heard this quote: whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, attributed to Goethe. I really want you to take this quote to heart. When my friends and I started Cincinnati Shakespeare Company 30 plus years ago, we were only 23. And we didn't know we were supposed to fail, so we didn't. We got $1,500 from my former boss and thought, we're rich, we'll do a whole season. $1,500. But look where that boldness has led me. Not waiting for anyone to give me permission and doing it myself has led to some pretty remarkable places, including a successful career as an award-winning actor and audiobook narrator and playwright, and now author. One thing I learned from the mystery thriller convention I went to last year was that Harlan Coben, who's a famous mystery writer, had a crisis of confidence early on in his career. And his agent told him, just get it down. You can fix bad pages. You can't fix no pages. And so every day he goes and sits down and does a little bit towards his goal. And look how far he's come. So I'll ask you what the rah-rah coach asked us. What do you know that no one else knows? What idea do you have that's unique that you can share with the world? What books or plays or guidance from someone like you do you want to write? Don't wait for somebody to give you permission. Follow Goethe's advice and begin it. Thank you. So, does anybody have any questions? I'll put my glasses, I can actually see you. Yeah. Yes, you. I know.
I'm curious.
Yes.
How do you navigate accents that you're perhaps not familiar with, or do you not take books with accents that you're not familiar with?
That is a great question. So accents, I have a huge range of accents in my little theater in my mind. If it's something that I really just can't do at all, and it's a main character, for example, my Australian is dreadful, then I will say, thank you so much for thinking of me, but I don't think I'm the right person to tell this story. I'll say, my friend Sarah Muller Christensen has an amazing Australian accent, and here's two other Australian narrators that I know. But if it's a secondary character, then what I'll do is I'll go on YouTube and find local YouTubers to that area. Like, for example, I did a book that was set in Namibia, and I found a local YouTuber in the village where this particular secondary character was supposed to be. And so I was able to learn that accent, sustain that accent for that secondary character. Sometimes we have all the embassies in DC. So I called the Embassy of South Africa for some Afrikaans and had some people record the Afrikaans for me so that I could translate it into like, just a IPA and read it that way. But if it's something I'm really, really bad at, I'll be like, you really don't want me to do this. I am a very good mimic. So if it's somebody that I can learn the vowel placements and the differences in English. Also, there is this great thing called the International Dialect of English Archives, where it has native speakers from all over the world that they've given the same passage. And you can listen to native speakers from anywhere in the world read this passage, and then they have an interview in English in their native dialect. It is an amazing resource. So it's IDEA, International Dialect of English Archives. And then George Mason University also has an accent archive as well. So between YouTube and the accent archive and IDEA, I can usually get pretty good, at least for secondary characters. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so as someone with ADHD, I find myself tracking a lot. Just find my eyes going without rereading. And then I start losing it.
Yes.
So I have to read the same line over and over and over and over again, and it discourages me from reading.
Yes.
I love reading so much.
Yeah.
But
So do you use a screen reader?
I don't. So I was gonna ask you, that's really cool.
Yes. So the screen reader that I use is called Voice Dream. I think it's not that expensive. I think I bought like the lifetime, whatever, because I use it every single day. Voice Dream. If I I noticed that I got that. I'll get it in a second. But yeah, Voice Dream and the here we go. Yeah, Voice Dream, and it looks like this. And any PDF, any like Word document, you can put it into this, and it will read it out loud to you. And I'll just play a little bit for you.
She points at one of the pairs who have been held together, whispering in some early bearish language.
Oh, wow.
Look at baby.
But you can change the speech rate.
Confident.
Yeah.
So I put it at like 280 words per minute.
Slight sensation. Clear love, disregard spirit.
But what it does is it keeps me from thinking about other things. And then another thing that I use all the time is Brain FM. Are you familiar with this? Brain FM. Oh, I think there is a version that's free, or at least you can get some of the stuff that's free. It is music that is formulated to keep that part of your brain busy so that you can focus on other things. And I use it every single day. And there's like focus area that has like motivation, creativity, deep work, and something else. And then there's stress relief. There is like going to sleep music. Like it's fantastic brain FM. So I highly recommend it. And I don't eyeball read anymore. I get everything through audiobooks. The libraries are fantastic for that. So if you aren't using the library for, it is not cheating, by the way. Using audiobooks is not cheating. I had to tell my niece who is in college at BYU. She's like, I have to read this book and I can't do it. I'm like, do you have an audiobook of it? She's like, yeah, but I have to read it with my eyes. I'm like, would you tell that to a blind person? No, it's not cheating. You may absolutely listen to audiobooks for anything you need to read. No problem. Hit me up anytime. I've got my information there. So, yeah.
How do you like getting?
So the question was, how do I get into the characters with acting? One of the things about being ADHD and quite honestly on the spectrum a little bit is that I mask really well. And so I mask by getting myself into that character's headspace. And I have done enough work now that I don't have to think about sad things in order to be sad. There is this wonderful method called Alba emoting. Look into it, it's fantastic. I think they might have changed the name of it, but if you look up Alba emoting, it should come up. They did studies on people that were, I think they were hypnotized, and they had them go through emotions, and they noticed that all of us go into very specific physical states when we go into an emotion. So like for sadness, if your chest caves in a little bit and your shoulders come forward a little bit, and then you take your eyes from like level down a little bit and then pull in a little bit of air over your teeth, like that, you can make yourself start to cry. And you don't have to beat yourself up internally. You don't have to go through any emotional damaging psyche stuff to be able to go through those emotions. So I take Michael Shirtliff's Audition is a great book, by the way. It's like $7.99 as a mass market paperback, but that has been my Bible. It tells you all the things that you should ask yourself about the different characters that you get into. Where are they from? What was their upbringing like? What are their secrets? What do they want from this other person? And once you mask yourself into that, it's like you're taking down a character from a massive, like, a massive closet, and you zip it up and you put it on, and you can wear that character for a while and then take it off and put it back so that it doesn't become you. So hopefully that helps.
I say we study out.
Yeah.
Is there narrators, registering the writer strikes? Is there be collective litigation?
Yes, so we, all of us, we were on a different contract, but all of us who are, who also do on camera stuff, all struck the different contracts and also the video game contract strike that I think is it ongoing? I can't remember if they resolved it or not. But unless the people, the producers were signed on to the contract that was appropriate, we all struck, and all of us ended up on picket lines. Now, all of the audiobook contracts were all being adhered to. So none of the producers there were affected. And that would be like punishing your neighbor for something your other neighbor did, right? So we adhered to those contracts and struck the other contracts in solidarity. Yes.
So you ever have like a character yelling?
That is a great question. So my technique is a big deal. My mic sits about here, and I only have 4 feet by 4 feet in my studio. I will usually turn the gain down. My gain is actually outside my booth, so it's not ideal, but I turn the gain down and then back up as far up from the mic as I can. And then I will do the yelling, but without hurting, like straining my vocal cords, but still like playing the moment of the scene and watch my waveform to make sure it don't peak. And then do it over again until I get a clean one that doesn't peak. Something also interesting is when you hear an audiobook, it's not like we sat down for, the entire time. We take breaks, and because we're in a soundproofed environment, you can't hear where the breaks happen. So like I could pick up in the middle of a sentence, but as long as it's called the noise floor, the quiet level of my room is good, you won't hear, but that's how I do it. Does that help?
How would you, or what advice would you give for a young person who wants to get into the book narration, or what does that mean?
Yes, I have so much good advice. So there is a fantastic website called narratorsroadmap.com. All of the information you need to know to become an audiobook narrator is online for free. Because this one woman named Karen Cummins, who's amazing, takes copious notes on everything she does. And she's been an audiobook narrator for, I think, 15 or 20 years. And she shares everything she learns. So on narratorsroadmap.com, there's all this information for free. How do I start? Who do I look to? And then if you need to like actually write to casting directors, it's like $35 for 6 months. It's very, very reasonable. And you can get access to all of those people's names and email addresses. And a lot of times casting directors will have interviews with them online that you can find on YouTube. Like, how does Julie Wilson like to be like to be approached? And you Google Julie Wilson, and then she has an interview online about how she likes to be approached, and then follow it that way. Narrators Roadmap also has coaches who are approved by the community. Again, it's a very small community, so if you're a jerk, it's going to get around really quickly. So none of the people on the list are jerks. So all of the approved coaches are on there. And once you have like a microphone and a closet and a computer that you can read off of, you're good to go. One of my friends says that you should take your favorite book and go into your closet and read it from the beginning. And every time you make a mistake, stop and go back to the previous breath, the previous comma, or the beginning of the sentence, and read it through without stopping for a couple of hours. And do that every day for a week. And if by the end of the week you still like it, then audiobook narration might be right for you. There's also narrator.life, which is another fantastic community. They have a couple of free classes. One is this the right thing for you? And that's kind of what they go with. And then also the beginning narrators jumping off point about like the basics that you need. And then I'll put in a plug for my friend's podcast, Starving Artist No More. Starving Artist No More is by a woman named Jennifer Jill Araya, who is the child of 2 small business accountants. And she has had 3 successful creative businesses. She's a concert cellist. She has had a craft business where she sold at craft fairs, and now she's an audiobook narrator. And each of those businesses, she's been able to make over 6 figures every year because she knows how not to be a starving artist. So it's all free. Her podcast, she gives away all of her tricks, but then she also coaches. So I would recommend her too. We're at 1:40. Do we have more time, or?
We have 10 more minutes if you like.
Awesome. Okay. Does anybody have any more questions? Yes.
Thank you though for like voice act for like animations or like video games. Is that something like you're interested in? Like, are you trying to get into that?
I would love to do that. That would be so much fun.
So I actually, my agent, the way I got her was I submitted to my friend Jeffrey Pierce is he was in gosh, what's the name of that? The one with Pedro Pascal and the little girl and Last of Us, right? You know what you said? The Last of Us. So my friend Jeff was in The Last of Us. And he was like big, I can't even remember his name, but like big burly beard, and he ends up getting eaten by one of the guys. So he said to his agent, his animation agent, you should really hear this woman's voice. And so they sent me a series of auditions where they were like, only don't do any voices, just be yourself. Okay. So then they got back to me and said, well, we have a voice like yours. And I'm like, nobody's voice is like mine. So they decided that they weren't going to take me on for animation, but they were going to take me on for audiobooks, and she's helped me enormously. So I'm very grateful for that. But my friends, Yuri Lowenthal and his wife, Tara, Yuri is the voice for Spider-Man in all the Spider-Man games now. And Yuri and I have known each other since the 8th grade. So they actually have been trying to get me into and get an animation agent. But honestly, I don't have time right now. I would love to do it, but I have a completely full schedule. I would love to do that though. Yeah, 100%.
Could you talk about how you use social media to promote yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Let me put my glasses on again so I can see. So I have a presence across the board except on X now. So I have my TikTok is probably my biggest one. It's like a little show. I can like, and that's where Kathy found me. So I will often narrate live on TikTok, because then that way there's a lot of authors on for book talk. And I follow authors. Like I'll go and follow the people that I want to follow me. And often independent authors will be like, oh, this person followed me, I'll follow them back. Really awesome. So they get to know me because my stuff comes up in their feed. Same thing on Instagram, a little less because it's so much bigger. But I post once a week on Tuesdays because most books usually come out on Tuesdays for whatever reason. And what's that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so yeah, if you'll look, most books that drop on a Tuesday. And I don't know why that is. I haven't done some research into it, yeah. So if it's not coming out on a Tuesday, it might be an independent author. But so I post once a week on Tuesdays, and it's usually about the project I have coming up. Like this week, I am posting about my book. And next week I'm talking about the Audis because the Audis are on that Tuesday. And the week after that, I have set up for little thing. So, so it's just about keeping myself front of mind. So because perception becomes reality, people, I mean, you know this from social media, you see like people's lives are going great, but it's only what they're posting. So that's all I post is about my job. So the way people get to know me is they know about my job. I stopped posting about my kid because he doesn't like that. So it's always about, this is the book I'm doing. This is the book I'm going to do. This is the author that I just met. This is the place I just went. So that's how I promote myself through social media. Sure. Yeah.
You ever do poetry?
I do poetry. Yeah.
You do?
I have three, well, more than that. 3 books of poetry from a fantastic trans poet. Her name is Luna Christine. She started writing as Cheska Christine, and her first book is pre-transition. Her second book is during the transition, and her third book is post-transition. And she just moved to England. She like sends me little snippets every now and again. But I did all of her books live on TikTok. And they're just beautiful poems. And it's about anybody who's, all of the poems are anybody who's having a hard time feeling like they're fitting in or frustrated with members of their family, or it's all about personal relationships. And they're fantastic. They're, I watched Through Windows is the first one. And Now I Fly is the second one. And the third one I'm blanking on, but if you look up Cheska Christine, you'll find her. Excuse me. Yes, I do poetry. Love it. By the way, I have my postcards back there that has all my information on it. It has a QR code where you can look up all my Audible books. There are also stickers that say, I can't hear you, I've got books in my ears. So, yeah. Yes. Okay, so I am in the Empyrean series, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame and Onyx Storm. Yeah, so I didn't do the full book myself. That's what I would love to do. But I play General Lilith Sorengale, Violet's mother. And yeah, it's me in the full cast recording for graphic audio. And my romance pseudonym is Bryce Quinlan in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. Yeah, I'm Bryce Quinlan. So I love those books so much. I would give most of my toes to do any of those by myself. Those would be incredible. Anything with like a massive cast like that. I'd have to keep a couple toes though, for balance. Anybody else? Yeah.
Do you miss the theater fix ever?
So I get this question a lot too. I miss the camaraderie, but I don't miss leaving my family for 6 weeks at a time. And so the last play I did on stage was a studio theater in 2019. And it was called Admissions, about an admissions scandal. And we did it at the time the admission scandal hit in 2019. We ended up extending for 9 weeks. So a play that I thought I was doing for 4 weeks ended up going for 13. And by the end, I was kind of done. And I was like, I was looking forward to just being with my son at home. And I think once he is like leaves the house, if he leaves the house, once he leaves the house, I think I'll probably look into on stage stuff again. But yeah, it just takes me away too much. And I make a lot more money. Like this is the first time I've had a savings account as an actor, working as an audiobook narrator. I had a fantastic career and no savings. And I was like making $150 a week on unemployment when I was in New York. It was bad. So yeah, they'd have to pay me more for me to come back. Any other questions? Well, thank you all so much for coming out to see me. This has been wonderful. Oh wait, can I take a selfie?
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. Okay. Okay, 1, 2. Excellent. Thank you all so much for having me here. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Before you all go,
Before we go, 1 second.
thank you.
You're welcome. Theater training.
Professional interjector there. March 17th, St. Patty's Day, the first Monday after spring break. Come back. David Graham, awesome poet, will be here. Okay, thank you.
Are these still recorded? These, just as I, Professor Checker and